You know, we just can't do it on our own. And so we have Bishop David Cooper, who is the senior pastor of New Hope Full Gospel Baptist Church in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who has had over 30 years of ministry experience. This is another resume, another bio that I can't read everything on here, or we'll be here for another couple of hours. But Bishop Cooper is, of course, does serve within the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship, and has launched, man, I see just a number of different initiatives, and is on the board of a bunch of different committees. And listen, Bishop Cooper, I won't go into everything. I'll let you have your way, sir. Talking about building relationships and collaborations through government contracts. And I think this is a very important piece. And I know that if there's the pastors on the line, would love to hear about this. So Bishop Cooper.
Well, thank you, Elder Torrey. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm blessed, Elder Feature. Thank you for your kindness to allow me to be with such a distinguished group of African-American church leaders.
Thank you, Bishop Cooper, for your patience. But we're sitting here waiting for knowledge from you, sir, and I so appreciate you joining us today. So go right ahead.
Well, my wife, co-pastor Nina Cooper, PhD candidate, sends her love. I think she's out getting her hair done because she tried to wait. And, you know, those
I apologize. Tell Dr. Cooper I apologize. I've been calling her that for a long time. All
right. Listen, I am grateful to be on today. All of our speakers have been tremendous. I don't know how we are planning on releasing this again to the masses, but I just think that this is so important. I pastor, so kind of give you some experience and environment, because when somebody say New Mexico, Black folks in New Mexico, yes, I was head of the census here for the city at the last census. There's only 3% in the whole state of our great state, African Americans. We are the only minority majority state in our country, which means that the brown and Black people outnumber the white people. You got, I want you to get that, 33% Hispanic, 33% Native American, and then there's about 32% white and 3% African American, and the rest are Asian or others. So I want you to understand that my dynamics are a little bit different. And so the whole issue of building relationships and collaborations is important, because when you're in the minority state, but then you're the minority of the state, many times you're overlooked. In fact, for many years, we just recently, through some advocacy, got the state to change how it represents itself. For many years, it represented itself as a tricultural state in all of its documents, which meant white, Hispanic, well, Anglo, Hispanic, and Native. Even though the African Americans have been here for years, the Buffalo Soldiers and all of that. This is the migration that did not go north and did not go as far west to make it into California. These are our family members who came from the South, who fled from Texas and Mississippi and Louisiana on their way to California and ended up stopping in New Mexico. And because of the industries that are here, because we're very big in technology, and of course, the first 2 atom bombs were built here. So anything that has to do with the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, a lot of that is housed here. That's how many African Americans rather come to be in our place. And so I actually pastor enough people that I need a sanctuary of 625 seats available, and one of 92 churches in our state. And many of those pastors allow me to cover them in leadership with our state government, our federal government, and their county and civic government as we come together in coalitions to work together. Now, I want to thank my teachers, and I think this is important. I want to thank the fact that I came from Chicago, and so I learned from Operation Push. I learned from my big brother who was on earlier, Bishop Simon Gordon, people like Apostle Carl White, Bishop Dwight Gunn in Chicago, Bishop George White in St. Louis, who was the only man that could walk across every prison yard in the state of Missouri without a prison guard escort. Bishop Nathaniel Gamillion, who works with small churches for our fellowship, Bishop C. Guy Robinson in Baltimore, and the late Dr. Ronald Knight, and then Dr. Jackie Fleming Hampton from Meharry Medical College, who taught me how to do community engagement and outreach. And of course, she's passed, and I worked with her and the CDC on the Project SAVE as it relates to HIV and AIDS, ridding the African American church community in 13 states in the South as it relates to the stigma related to HIV and AIDS for 5 years. And then, of course, my good friend DeForest Soaries in New Jersey, who I work with in D3, and then all my mayors and my governors. And I said all that because one of the things that is important in our discussion today is building relationships. This is essential. So for me, I have these relationships with not only the African American community, but with the white evangelicals. And so I want you to hear me, but also Hispanic evangelicals. And so when all of this stuff happened, of course, they all come running to me, crying. And every time I spoke to them truthfully, they thought I was the angry Black man. And I began to share books with them, like White Fragility, and sharing probably my favorite book that I think every African American needs to read who's a Christian is The Color of Compromise by J. Mar Tisby, who is a noted theologian at Notre Dame University and has done in research as it relates to the white church compromise with the slave movement and this white privilege and how it has been supported and how it has metamorphosized into the law and order party. And so with all that said, I have to build relationships in both ways. Now, a few years ago, while building relationships, I still have to speak truth to power. And so this is difficult sometimes when you're trying to build relationships, first of all, internally in your city. Secondly, within the government structure, because of course, politicians are always afraid of the pastors who sound like Al Sharpton and move like Jesse Jackson. And so that can be dangerous. And then on the other end, the white evangelical church who has drunk the Kool-Aid of abortion being the preeminent purpose in Christian faith, and forget, as Tony Evans says, that God is not just a God about the womb, but he goes from the womb to the tomb. And so it's not just about whether or not I live, it's also about what is the quality of my life and whether or not I am able to navigate what the American government and the Constitution says are my unalienable rights. So I said all of that because in having to navigate all that, I'm constantly in the issue of advocacy, while at the same time doing some things that may be considered adverse to the government. And so if you go to the New York Times in 2011, you'll find out that if you put in my name, you will see something that would be amazing, that I sued the University of New Mexico based on the fact that they were discriminating against doctors, as you can see. This is December 22nd, 2011. Those Black groups are all of my groups. And I sued this group, this university, which is a state university, and especially its health science center. And I say this because when I did it, my relationships were tested. So I had to have proper relationship because this is our second largest employer in the state. which is the University of New Mexico. It is the Health Science Center has our only trauma hospital in the whole state. And by doing that in 2011, I was able to move the university from not having one department head that was African American. We had no college on campus that had a Black head of a department to now, since then, we've had the dean of the law school, we've had presently the head of the sociology department, and several others, and then there was less than 20 on tenure. Since then, we have had at least 40 on tenure or on a tenure track. And I say that because presently I have changed that relationship from an adverse relationship to now a relationship of advocacy. And I'm going to share that with you in a few minutes about how I got that done. Now, one of the things I think is also important to note is this whole idea of the Black church. And I think we need to really deal with this issue because God has blessed us to always have what we considered a medium-sized church, even when I pastored in Chicago. And I remind everybody that we all know that the National Congregational Study done by Duke University, the last one was in 2018, 2019, that the average church in America, Black, white, or Hispanic, only have 75 adult members. And not all of them faithfully attending every week. So whenever we have a discussion about the Black church, this whole idea of collaboration is essential if we're going to make real change in our community. And part of the struggle of the Black church presently is the ability to come together, first of all, internally in the local church, and then externally in the Black community. And so there's a couple of things I wanted to share right quick, and they may seem simplistic, but what I found in my 44 years of preaching and over 35 years of pastoring, they are essential to us having relationship with other people outside of the local church and collaborations. And so I give a short example. Joseph, of course, with Pharaoh in Egypt, Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, and Nehemiah with Cyrus and Persia. And so I'm not going to preach, but there are three things I wanted to talk about in just this issue of building relationship. First of all, if we're going to build relationship, we have to have intentional integrity. And what I mean by that is that we have to go into building relationships intending to operate as one person, the same person at all times, so that we wouldn't be 4 or 5 different people at the same time, but we would be that one person. Now, this is crucial because if I'm going to be trusted later, it is intentional integrity that allow other people to trust me. Second of all, I need to have emotional intelligence. And we're all familiar with what emotional intelligence is, but as pastors and as leaders, we got to know ourselves. It's so important that you don't build a relationship with a person that you know that you're oil and water with. You can't have a relationship with every person. One of the things I've learned is how to recognize that some of us will disagree about minor things, but if we can work together on major things, that's essential. And so that's one of the ways I know about myself, that I can be comfortable where other pastors are uncomfortable. I can sit in a room where they're talking about stuff like abortion or gay rights and not fall out, not go to speaking in tongues and throwing oil on everybody. And then the other issue is partnership investment. Because if you're going to really build relationships, the people that you are in relationship with, they must see you investing in them. I serve as a Southwest Regional Bishop of Full Gospel. And one of the reasons that we are successful in what we do is simply because I assure by my actions and my behaviors to those who are pastors that I am truly invested in their personal success. One of the problems with most relationships is that people are always fearful that if I come into this relationship with you, you may take advantage of me. And especially if you're the leader in a collaborative effort and you're trying to get other churches to work together, they need to know that you care for them as much as your own success. And so because of that, this is my 5th term as the president of the Ministers Fellowship of Albuquerque and vicinity. Is also, and there's about 32 churches in our city, African-American led. But this is also, I'm now leading 92 churches cross denomination, across the length and the breadth of our state that represents 23 cities in our state. It has a lot to do with sharing the wealth, sharing opportunity, sharing knowledge. And I think that sometimes in our local churches or in a local Black church community, what we end up doing, we end up not sharing those kind of things. So now there's a couple of things I want to say to those who are listening. First of all, when I talk about emotional intelligence, you must ask yourself, first of all, am I a collaborative leader? Now, if that's not who you are, then you may need to go and deal with that aspect of why you are not a collaborative leader. And then do I possess social intelligence? Do I really understand what are the dynamics of my community and what is my role in that? And then thirdly, have I built a collaborative church? And if I am building or have built a collaborative church, then I must be totally committed to silo busting. Now, those few things alone is enough for me to talk another hour about, just in the building relationships, so that we can start to talking about collaboration. So let me say this quickly. So you have to build relationships so that you can collaborate, so that you can then move to building relationships with government, so that when one person goes see your state rep, your mayor, your governor, they will give you time because you represent the Black church. But when that one person comes with 3 other people who represents 90 other congregations, the governor then decides to do some things that they never thought they would do. The mayor decides to do some things that they never thought they would do. And they begin to allow you in. Now, part of what is so important in this aspect is that you have to be trusted in your own community. You have to be trusted with your own colleagues, so that when you move in, they'll go in with you, not making side deals after you leave. Let me show you one more slide, because I want you to get this, and hopefully this is helping you, and hopefully this is helping me too. Trying to get to the right slide. Y'all excuse me. My wife is the technology person, and get to that next slide. There we go. Amen. My degree is in preaching. Amen. So here we go. Building collaborations. So when you start talking about building collaborations of any kind, the first thing I want to talk to you is about presenting capacity. That you must come with the capacity to do some things that line up with that entity, the state, the county, the city, the federal government. You must present a capacity to do certain things. Now, this is so important because it demands that you come to the table not with your hand out, but with representing that you can help them with your hands up. So that means that you could actually help them to accomplish those things that are common objectives. I always tell pastors that you have to do this without federal dollars, without state dollars, without county dollars first, so they can see that you have buy-in. This is crucial. I get calls from the state, federal, and city government because they know of my capacity. They know that we're already doing certain things. And because we're doing certain things, they bring dollars to us and say, Bishop, we really want you a part of it. Now, for them politically, it's about them presenting themselves as caring for our community. But we must first present that we have the capacity, because they don't want us on the news 3 months from now showing that we lack capacity. We were supposed to do one thing, we didn't do another. We were programmed, we were funded to do one thing, and we did not do it. So one of the things I recommend to pastors is that just don't attempt to do anything. You hear the government is offering this program, make sure that you have the passion for fulfilling whatever is the objective. If it's against human trafficking and you personally don't have a passion in that area, you don't understand it, you can't conceive it, then what my recommendation to you is to find something different. Make sure, second of all, that you are expanding capacity. Now, this is important in every case. In every case, as a collaborator, is that your partners want to make sure that you're increasing your capacity. There are so many capacity building tools that oftentimes when I deal with state and federal government, I actually ask them, is there a capacity building component? This is crucial because many of even our business people, they don't know how to work with their state government for contracting. And so in order for them to be successful, so you have a person in your congregation who could provide some services for the state, the federal, or the local government, but they don't understand how to write in certain documents, fill out certain documents, and every state is different. And so this is important. When I talk about expanding your capacity, this is one of the things I want you to consider. I got 5 questions that I want to ask the average pastor or church leader. Do you attend conferences outside your professional capacity? Because when I started going to Meharry Medical College for a year, once a month for 3 days, I knew nothing about community engagement. I knew nothing about HIV and AIDS, but because of some of my other work locally, I was invited into a national program and was funded. Are you part of a national network? Some national network. You cannot be alone. You got to find the one that fits who you are. And then I am also a student of Lisa Wiseman, and I used to be the president of Oracle group. And one of the groups is just bought TikTok. And she teaches a principle about multipliers. And so one of the things I ask our leaders, are you using all of the brains that are present? And what I mean by that, a good leader not only use their brains, but use the brains of the people around them. Most pastors have never, ever did a professional inventory of their membership. They know what gifts they possess, but they don't know them professionally at all. So one of my friends told me once he was trying to get city contracts and he found out one of the women in his choir worked in procurement downtown for the city and had been doing that for 20 years and never mentioned it to him. Shouting on every sermon, singing, speaking in tongue, rolling out on the floor, and he's here trying to get government contracts, and she works in the city procurement office. Yeah. And so the fourth question is, how often do you meet with parties outside your church? How often do you meet with government officials, university officials, even locally? Do you know the principal of the school? Do you know the president of the business association in your community? I recently was invited to the New Mexico Chamber of Commerce. Most of you don't know that New Mexico is third in producing oil and gas. This particular council that I was invited to speak to actually is funded by the oil and gas industry of New Mexico. So when California ran out of gas, New Mexico sold them gas. When there's no gas or oil flowing in Texas, they come across the border, not the international border, it's New Mexico. They come across the state border and they get gas and work on jobs for gas and oil. We have a town downstate that went from 20,000 to 60,000 people because of natural gas in less than a year. And so because of that, them calling me, now I have arranged for the meetings with the pastors in that area to provide a Black liaison person to deal with the oil and gas industry for the African American community. This is essential. I have to have meetings outside of just the church and the religious community if I am going to collaborate. This all has to do with this issue of expanding capacity. One last share, and I haven't learned how to share the screen and my face at the same time, so y'all, I do apologize greatly for my lack of ability in that area. And my wife was trying to stay to help the poor man of God. And let me go here. I want you to see this. The last thing is building capacity strategically. Building capacity strategically. So I'm building relationships, internal, external. I'm building collaborations. But then I got to build capacity strategically. I honestly believe that one of the challenges to the church presently is that we spend a lot of time on best practices. But best practices does not give us what I consider a strategic advantage. And let me explain that right quick. A strategic advantage is what you do so totally different than everyone else that you are the resource for that particular effort or work or area. The gentleman we just heard from in Milwaukee, I got to call you. You're doing some great things. I'm like amazed by what you do. And well, I'm probably going to be, yes.
I'm sorry, I just texted Pastor Young and said, you need to connect with Bishop Cooper. I just texted him. And now
we know you're spiritual. You got to be bragging on your spirituality that you hear from God. And so, but this whole issue of building collaboration, the only thing I didn't mention there was about being a contributor. But I want to get to the strategic part because demographic assessments. So I have to know my area well. Because I am in the minority state, it's important, but it's also for your community as well. McDonald's is not in the hamburger business. As we know, Ray Kroc said, they're in the real estate business. They will only put a McDonald's in certain places. So many times in the local church, the reason we cannot collaborate because we don't know our demographics. We don't know what our real needs are. So I'm gonna give you my most recent collaboration. So that same University Health Science Center that I filed a Title VI against in the Department of Justice and 12 other departments that would have stopped $385 million in 1 year from coming to the university. got me to the table real quick. And we began to move our relationship from an adverse relationship to where I am probably their biggest advocacy. They asked me once, what do I want? And I told them, I want to have a hospital clinic. And the president of the chancellor of the Health Science Center says to me, Dr. Rolfe, he says, well, we can do what we do at the schools. We can send you a nurse or a PA a few hours on Sunday. I said, no, I want a full clinic at my local church. In fact, I want it in 3. Now, this is 2011, I filed the suit. This is about 2013, where they done settled up, they done proven their record. And he sits back and say, Bishop, I said, because I tell him I don't want anything for me, but I want something for my community. And so even though there was 2 other pastors who were not present, I included their churches. So the first of the 3 clinics is about to happen at New Hope Church, where I pastor. And so we are maybe less than 10 days from taking the final contract to the regents. They're going to do $1.7 million worth of remodel in my building. So it would be up to the Department of Health requirements. Then they're going to rent what they renovate for 9 years with a 3-year option, and with the first option to buy if I decide to sell my spot. Well, y'all not listening to me. And so,
Amazing.
okay. And so with that said, we hope to open up, because they're going to take them 11 months just to do the remodel. Their plan is to open up by October 21st or October 2021. They're going to pay us rent after they remodel. There is nothing like this in the country. So it's going to allow the Lazarus Project, which is our new CDC for our church, Community Development Corporation, to do all kinds of research, to do all kinds of housing, and to employ people our own. Now, the whole clinic is going to be ran, all 4,000 square feet, by the university with PAs and with doctors and registered nurses and nurses' assistants. Going to be just like any other clinic. I don't want it to be the Black clinic. I want it to be the hospital clinic in the Black church. I have been negotiating this deal for 4 years. I've had over 68 meetings about this. It is so important that I learn my demographics, because my church sits in the #1 commercial area in our state. I'm down the block from Apple, round the corner from Ruth Chris. You understand what I'm saying? And because of that, I'm in prime land, but 6 blocks south of me is an area called the war zone, where there's gang activities and there's poverty. And then 6 blocks further down, there's the Air Force Base. But if I go 6 blocks north of me, is the largest area of apartments. So what I learned by going to Meharry, I want you to hear this, is that when people go to the emergency room, it costs the hospital more money. Now, they actually lose money with clinics, but they lose more money if you don't go to the clinic and go to the emergency room, especially if you're on Medicare or Medicaid, which doesn't pay your full amount. What I found out is that the area codes, that is the war zone and the apartment complex, had the largest number of emergency room visits to the University of New Mexico Hospital. By also working with Meharry, I worked with a young woman who's a Presbyterian pastor in Ann Arbor, who did a presentation to the American Medical Association and her presentation was that simply that Black people will care about their health if they have Black people telling them about their health. and the Black church supporting their health outcomes. And this has been proven by research, so much so that I'm sitting in, again, at Meharry Medical College. That's why you have to step out of your pulpit, pastors. I'm sitting there next to a guy who said, yes, it's true, because I'm in East Carolina, and I'm on the board of one of the hospital systems, and they wanted to find Black pastors who would be part of the aftercare program. So that once people leave the hospital and they meet with whoever they need to meet, the social worker, the doctor, they would then leave and go meet the pastor, and the hospital system would actually pay the pastor to make sure Mother Brown stayed on her medicine. Wow. Now, he told them come into the board meeting and ask for $1 million for 7 pastors that they would split, and they got scared and they asked for 100,000, and 2 minutes later they agreed, y'all gonna do all this work for 100,000? So part of the problem is if you don't know your demographics, and then you don't assess your resources. What are the resources of the university? What are the resources of state government, of city government? How much money do they have for this particular issue? Now, I'm doing a bunch of these projects. This is just my biggest one. And so you got to target your capacity and building efforts. And what I mean by that, accounting, you got to have somebody doing your accounting. You got to have somebody who's dealing with the law concerning whatever collaboration there is, because you got to dot every I, cross every T. You can't steal any money. It can't be about you getting rich. It got to be about doing the work of the community. If you want to know how you can really leverage those resources, you feel free to call me, 505-385-0575. Only the quick got it. Okay. So just know that this is so important to those of you who want to make sure that you are doing business contracts. So let me finish and I'm done. Government business contracts. I will also share with you one more slide. Let me know if my time is up already. I know it is. It's just like on Sunday morning. I'm done before I know I was done. Okay, I don't think I even put that one in there. So let me just simply say this to you. Let me get back to this. I didn't put this last slide into you. So it is important that you deliver what you promised to deliver. Those deliverables are essential. It is also important that you educate yourself and be willing to evolve into new ways of imagining projects' effectiveness. Let me say this to the Black church. I have people that work in state government, federal government at my church, and all different levels. This is one of the things that most Black church people do not understand. You are probably more organized than the average person in federal government, in state government, and in local government. First of all, you don't have to deal with the Black church member, so you know how to deal with temperament. That's I mean, even in the workplace, in the federal workplace, the state workplace, a lot of it has to do with temperament. So you know how to negotiate and navigate things and people who may not always agree with you at the beginning, and you know how to bring them to a place of collaboration and agreement without compromising the central matter or idea. And so one of the reasons they bring you to the table is because they want your perspective. So I think I'm the only person on this call who had a 3-hour meeting with my governor this week and then have another one next week. And that the governor meets with me and a group of pastors at least once a month to discuss how the African American community is affected by things that's going on in state government. But a lot of that is because she wants the perspective. Now, this is the same woman, Governor Grisham, who was the chairperson of the Hispanic Caucus. I've built a relationship with her based on presenting to her, imagining different ways to effectively move projects. So, fiscal and program integrity, complete adherence to legal compliance, and most of all, avoiding conflict of interest. Now, I'm gonna give you this plus and I'm done. And then anybody has a question, hopefully this is a blessing to you. Netflix moved to Albuquerque. Most people don't know we are the third largest film area as well. So when you saw Denzel Washington walking across the desert in the Book of Eli, all of that was New Mexico until he got to San Francisco. And No Country for Old Men, New Mexico. I go to the car wash from the one television show with the meth dealers. I forgot the name of it now, it just slipped my head.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Breaking Bad. That's 5 blocks from my church, the car wash. And so Netflix and Universal, NBC Universal, both came to our state. Their first film for Netflix is The Harder They Fall. Google it. It is financed by somebody that you may know. His name is Jay-Z. And it's a Black Western with Idris Elba, Regina King, Delroy Lindy, and a bunch of other people. Well, when they were about to come to New Mexico, I get a call from the mayor's office because I had just met with the film development person for our city. He said, they're looking for a place to have a casting call. Will you host it? I hosted it. And they were expecting 400 people to show up. The first night in cold weather, this is January, 1,600 people showed up. They were lined up around my church for 3 hours. I've since then met with the film development and the economic development person for our state, because the woman that was over the city has been promoted to the state. And right now we are in negotiations, hopefully they're not listening right now, of putting a Black liaison person, and it'll probably be somebody I select or recommend to work in the office. They are doing both within the next 10 years, $500 million worth of film in New Mexico. And I have been leveraging the church, the Black church, to be the principal partner with Netflix and NBC Universal and their studio. That's $1 billion in the next 10 years. My name is Bishop David C. Cooper, and I approve this message. God bless you.
Bishop David C. Cooper. Jesus.
Black man in Albuquerque. You heard that.
Man.
In the desert, nonetheless.
Incredible.
Incredible.
Do you have this in a book, Bishop Cooper? Because I know a lot of people that would buy this book.
It's almost done. It's almost done. It's almost done.
Good. That was powerful.
And I'm sorry about going over 15. I do apologize.
It was worth it.
Definitely worth it. It's incredible how much is out there for us that we don't know or don't take advantage. It is incredible. There's so much out there that we could take advantage of that could really change the course of a big government entity coming in to remodel my building and then pay me rent once the remodel is come on. That's ridiculous. That is fantastic. But it makes a lot of sense, right? It makes a lot of sense for them because they're losing money when people go to the ER. And so it's a shrewd business decision for them too. In the same way, when these natural disasters happen, there's things out there for us to take advantage of that can really help us and get back on our feet and all that stuff. But if we don't know about it, if we don't connect, if we don't have relationships, if we don't go to, attend and meet with people outside of our pulpits, we're going to miss. We're going to continue to miss out. And which is why we're so glad to have Bishop LaTresa Jester on. Now, I have the opportunity to work fairly closely with Bishop Jester as it relates to Full Gospel, because she does these weekly readiness tips on Full Gospel. You could follow at FGBCF or, of course, at LaTresa Jester. And she does these weekly readiness tips for Full Gospel. And when she comes on with, hey, fam, you about to get some good stuff. So I'm here to tell you right now, Bishop Jester is going to share with us about disaster relief in the Black community. And Bishop, I'm not sure if you planned on sharing this story, but you should tell the story about what happened with Laura, Hurricane Laura. It impacted Florida. Nobody was expecting it to. And we had to galvanize, you all had to galvanize quickly, and you all made some things happen, again, through strategic partnerships. Bishop Jester, we're in your hands.
Thank you so much. Let me say I've been kind of in and out most of the day because I am actively working a disaster. So we have a disaster that we are in the midst of right now. And so I've kind of been all over the place all day. I will share that story, but quickly let me say thank you, Elder and Pastor. Again, what an amazing opportunity for what I have gathered today. Man, if I was the type that would be intimidated, I'd be intimidated, but that ain't in my spirit. So I'm just glad
the lady bishop don't get it
here with you guys today. Let me say though to you, Bishop Cooper, I am in the process of doing exactly what you said when I am looking at our capacity as it relates to Full Gospel, because we are in the process of negotiating a contract with Red Cross. And I said to them, this can't just be a friendship. This is a partnership. I had to be able to tell them what we have to know our capacity so that I could know how much money to ask for. So I might call you to kind of help me out a little bit on that, but I am doing just that, sir, so that we can be in the right position to do what we need to do in the future. So you gave your number fast, but I already got it, so I'll call you. So listen, again, thank you so very much. And let me share that story. My presentation is like probably right at 15 minutes, so won't keep you too long. But in our last disaster, again, this has been an absolutely crazy disaster season. We have had more hurricanes in this year, tropical storms in this year than we've had, probably, I think, close to 50 years. And so this year is just going to go down on record as it relates to disasters. Again, on one coast, it's the rain and or storms and hurricanes. On the other coast is fires. So we know that this is just an unusual year. But about 6 weeks ago, as Hurricane Laura was headed in, the thing about disasters or hurricanes, they kind of let you know where they're going. But they don't need permission to change their mind. And that's what Hurricane Laura did. We were forecasting that it was, going to hit some areas of Louisiana, kind of go up through Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, kind of affect those areas. But it slammed Florida. Pensacola got hit, and we were not prepared. Those of us in the field of disaster services, disaster recovery, was not prepared for that recovery effort. But in a matter of days, because I follow up with the leaders in those states when something happens and say, just kind of what's going on. So as I was doing a recovery check, discovered that we had a vulnerable population full predominantly of African Americans that had been out of power for days. and was able to place a call to Red Cross to say, listen, this is a situation. I know you have resources. And in less than 24 hours, we had people in place getting trained. One of our overseers, Overseer May in that area, allowed us to use his building. And we went from that population, those vulnerable people having nothing, to in less than a week, we helped facilitate almost $600,000 in resources. And none of that came out of our pocket. I didn't have to raise an offering. I didn't have to do a plea. I called a partner. And so it's so very important that we establish these relationships prior to disasters, so they knew our capacity and knew that they could trust us. And so as a result of that, the contract that I had been working on kind of got pushed to the main person's desk. And I got a call from DC saying, I heard about what Full Gospel can do. So when you do what you're supposed to do, they'll call you. So I am over the top excited about that and what we're doing. Let me do just one more plug, and I'm going to get to the presentation. But also right now, we have people that, again, some of the same folks that suffered in Laura are now suffering in this disaster. We have 6,500 people in New Orleans right now that came from some of the areas that were impacted, Lake Charles, some of the areas that were impacted, living in hotels. And you're going to hear me say this because I'm going to get it out to bishops and pastors and leaders. It's us in the hotels, but they don't see us help and serve. And I'm looking for some folks that can just kind of help me get people there to help feed. Because again, when we show that we can partner and kind of take care of our own, it's going to make a world of difference. So you'll see me kind of doing plugs. So that is what I've been doing all day, trying to just navigate things as we are trying to figure out who was impacted and the storm is not over. So let me see if I can do what everybody else does and kind of share my screen. And see if I can see. Every time I go to do this, I pull up the wrong thing. Let's see. There it is. Okay, I'm sharing it, right? Nod at me if I'm sharing it. Okay, I'm sharing it. All right. So let me just kind of go through this. I think I'm sharing it, but when I try to hold on, it says I'm sharing. Okay, there we go. So what I really want to talk about is what I experienced on the front line as it relates to disaster services, because I think this is going to show what's so very important as it relates to how we move forward. My life changed for the better as a result of Katrina. I know that that's not everybody's story, but I was sitting in church when we got word in 2005 that folks from New Orleans was going to be coming to Tucson, Arizona. That's where my church is, and my pastor at that particular time said, we need some volunteers to kind of go down to the convention center because we want to be able to receive them. I did, and began to volunteer. And as a result of the need, as a result of seeing, and I think just the natural passion that I had for people, I took a leave of absence from my job to do case management work and work with these folks that had come into our city. 2 weeks after into my leave of absence, I was called from a nonprofit organization by the name of Lutheran Disaster Response. And the CEO of that organization that was very active in disaster, had received a huge FEMA grant, wanted to talk to me about coming on board, working with them. I had absolutely no disaster experience. And she said, but we've watched you. I had no experience. Walked into her office, and she began to put some things up on the board and said, if you could do this and do that, and kind of built a picture. And she said, how much would you, what kind of salary were you looking for? I said to her, I'm not looking for a job. I got a job. She said, put a number up there. I'll play. I brought a number up on the board, and she said, when can you start? Y'all heard me say I had no experience. Because I practice cool, I act like I was used to this kind of thing happening to me all the time. So let me go back and talk to my husband. Sat in the car and about lost my mind, because I couldn't believe, based on volunteering and passion and my love, that somebody was going to pay me the amount that they paid me. Trained me. I had no experience, and they trained me. And so, almost 17 years later, it's a result of just being available, right? And so as we look at Katrina changed the way we do disaster, the way we respond to disaster, because New Orleans had a plan, but they hadn't shared the plan. And so that was part of what Bishop Cooper was saying earlier. It's one thing to have a plan. It's another thing that people have to know your plan. And so you see the bullet points real quick on the screen. There were approximately 2,000 deaths as a result of Katrina, right? Which displaced over 1 million people out of the greater Louisiana area. But for lack of preparedness, they were forced out of Louisiana completely. They had a plan. Emergency management, as it relates to disaster response and recovery, had a plan, but they had not put it in place because they never thought it was going to happen to them. We've been in conversations for years that if the right storm happened the wrong way, they knew it could happen. That is what I believe is the dilemma with African Americans. We don't believe it's going to happen to us. So as much as we know we need a plan, we don't put a plan in place. And so hear this, 15 years after Katrina, 90% of the residents returned. But look at this as it relates to vulnerable population in our people. Only 37% of the 9th ward, where our folks were, returned. 90% returned, but only 37% of the vulnerable population, those that lived in the 9th ward, and those that lived in the 9th ward look like us. And the church wasn't ready. The people went to the church for help, but the church wasn't ready. And so they implemented something called spontaneous volunteers. Let's just see what we could do. But there was no system in place. When the church even came back to the city, they were not in place to help those that needed the help. So I came on board again with an organization by the name of Lutheran Disaster Response. I saw this a couple days on the job. They implement a system called Family First. If you know anything about the Lutheran Church, 98% of Lutherans are white folks, 98%. So they take care of themselves. And if we get in the mix, they'll take care of us. And they are one of the largest faith-based organizations responding in disaster, but they take care of family first. And as a result of that, I came in there and said, let me learn everything y'all doing. Because someone has to get into a place to where if we're gonna take care of family first, we're gonna take care of family first. And so I am now honored to serve in the position as the bishop over disaster for Full Gospel. And so we're going to take care of family first. And that's not necessarily Full Gospel, which we will honor those that are in relationship with us. But I am in position to just kind of, watch this, change the face of the responder. Too oftentimes we're the victim, but when people go out to help those of us that have been victimized, they don't look like us. A major percentage of folks that volunteer are not African Americans, but we are the ones, for the most part, that have the need. And so watch this. Disaster preparedness or resiliency is the ability of individuals, communities, and organizations to adapt and recover from hazards, emergencies, or stressors without compromising long-term prospect for development. So that's what disaster preparedness is. It's the ability for us to understand disasters as they come in, but not only understand them, but be in position to recover from them. And a disaster is not only natural. And I think that's another thing that we have to make sure that people know. Or let me put it to this way: a disaster is not only something that gets a federal declaration, which means the president approves, for funding. Is another thing happened in Florida. He did not approve funding because the majority of the people that were impacted in Florida were in vulnerable populations. He sent money to the governor that gave it to his folks, but those of us that needed it didn't get it. And so again, we have to be in position to do to know how to respond. So we're working to change the face of responders, that we can get in position to be able to help those that need help. And that's extremely important because there is an assessment element of disaster recovery, and most folks don't know where the need is. Ergo, the church has to be in position to say, I got members on Jones Street and their power has been out, but because other folks don't know Jones Street exists, they're not coming into our neighborhoods making sure we get the resources that are available. So we have to change the faces of the responders. And so look at this as it just relates to the disparities of African American communities and the vulnerable populations. For the most part, we are impacted on a greater level because of where we live. We're in lower lying areas. Before a disaster comes, most communities, as it relates to African Americans, are already dealing with disaster. So even before we get this, even before COVID came as a disaster, they were already dealing in situations that were less than desirable. And so for that reason, our populations don't recover as fast because we start at a deficit. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit. This slide, to me, hold on, I went too fast. It's so important, and one of the things that I am really, really working on, making sure that we get to the church, because these are the cycles of disaster. I teach this holistically because as much as it works for disaster, it works in life. And so the cycles are prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. COVID is the first disaster in history that we've ever been in all 4 cycles at the same time. We're working on mitigation, which is what's the risk assessment of this disaster, and then trying to prepare for it so that we can put some skill sets together and then respond appropriately and recover. So the very first disaster where we are constantly working in all 4 cycles. So risk assessment or mitigation is the ability to know what's coming, to know your risk, to know the area that you live in, to know your neighborhood, and then plan for it. Not that you can stop a disaster, but you can decrease the impact of the disaster. And then once you have mitigated, then you can prepare for what might come. And we need to work better on that. And then I said this a few minutes ago as I alluded to the fact as it relates to response or recovery. The Black church must get involved because, again, the response area or timeline of a disaster is the minute the storm passes, we start response efforts. And money is available the minute something passes. But if they don't know, they're not going to come to us and ask us if we need the money. But if we go to them and say, here is a need, they will give us the money. As soon as most disasters happen, Red Cross is putting people up in hotels. How many times have our folks been in a storm and know they can just go just there and get in a hotel? Because they don't know, because we are not in position to tell them. They're sitting around in the dark for 5 days. That's part of what we did in Florida. We called folks like, look, we need this whole hotel because we have this entire neighborhood. But because our people are not at the table where the decisions are being made and the money is given, I walk in so many rooms as it relates to disaster, and I am the only person of color in the room. And so we just have to do better. We have to do better. So recovery, again, is getting you back to a place of normalcy. Faith-based and community initiatives is an absolutely amazing program that, again, so many people don't know about. It was instituted under President Bush, but he did it so that there was money specifically for the church as it relates to recovery. But because we are not, because we only show up when there's a problem, we can't get the money because nobody knows our name. And so you have to do the work and prove your ability so that when the grants come out, this storm, this season that we're dealing with right now, there will be billions of dollars that are going to come as a result of 2020. And again, I am positioning Full Gospel so that we can make sure that we not only get the money, but that when someone says Full Gospel from an African American perspective, they will think of us as it relates to disaster recovery. And we need to do that for both vulnerable populations and African Americans. So the plan of the church. This is what I do in my church. This is what I do. Number one, new members class, they create a plan. Part of joining our church is making sure that you have a disaster plan. You have a plan in place so that if anything strikes, man, if you have a fire, as much as that's not a national disaster, that's a disaster. If there is someone gets a hold of poison in your house, you know what to do. And so we make sure that the minor, from minor to major, that we start going through the process of putting together a plan for those that are impacted, because the better the people we serve, the better position that they're in, the less we have to worry when a disaster happens. So if we can get you prepared prior to a disaster, then we don't have to respond. One of the things that we teach in putting a plan together, it comes from the world of disaster services, that you should have at least 72 hours where you can survive by yourself if nobody comes to you. But because so many of our people don't have money to put 72 hours worth of food together, to have spare food, many of them are trying to make it from day to day. This is a great opportunity for the church to come together to make sure that in the event of a major storm and people have to shelter in place, which means I can't get to a shelter, so I have to stay at home and ride the disaster out, that we collectively can make sure that they have what's necessary to survive. We have food pantries, and the food pantries sit locked up when we have people sheltering in place and they're hungry. So those are some little things that we're working on. We make a point of just looking at what type of disasters might happen in your area, because depending on the disaster, your response effort is going to be different. One of the other things, and again, I said 15 minutes, and I'm gonna move through this. One of the other things that we think is so very important, I did this today on a live. If a storm is coming my way, how do I know? There were hurricanes that touched down, tornadoes that touched down today in areas of Alabama. And I'm on the phone texting all my folks in Alabama saying, are you getting the warnings? Because again, a hurricane is going to tell you it's coming. Sometimes you don't know a tornado is coming until it's right on top of you. But again, those of us in the field have tools. And so everybody on here, we're gonna get this out to everybody. You ought to download the Red Cross emergency app. Everybody ought to have the Red Cross emergency app. My app went off all night because I have different cities that I'm monitoring. The storm hit here, a tornado's hitting here, something's on its way to Atlanta. This is, and so where you are and where your family is, that if we do nothing else, the church can say, I need you to download emergency alert warning so that you can stay safe. Y'all, I believe in prayer. I believe in the power of God, but I also believe in wisdom. And there are some things that we can do to keep our people safe prior to it happening. For whatever reason, disaster isn't something we jump in and say, oh my God, I really want to do this. But if we don't learn anything else out of 2020, man, disasters are real. And again, they don't discriminate as far as whose house they're going to hit. What is my shelter plan? If I have to shelter in place, can I? Have I charged my devices if power goes off? So there's just some basic stuff I think the church can help do to help those that are vulnerable, to help our own people, because we are not chasing trying to learn what disasters are, but disasters are affecting us and our people. And we tend to be the least served. But if we can make talking about this almost like, let me just say it. If we can make talking about this or having this discussion as part of a new members class, it would make a world of difference. Just a small amount of readiness. So there are just some things there that we'll make sure to make available. The partners that we are currently dealing with in FEMA. We have state leaders, regional leaders that are now being trained in FEMA, so that again, if something happens, we are partners. We are partners. Red Cross about to give us money. We're partners, and I am working diligently to get a table, to get a seat at the table of VOAD. VOAD is a national organization of voluntary organizations active in disasters. When money is being assigned, they go through VOAD. We're not at the table. And so I promise you, we're going to get a seat at the table. So I think what's most important about disaster in the Black church is it's not in the Black church. We don't talk about it enough. We don't do it enough. When we go back in the buildings, we are cognizant of it now. But I said this to Bishop Cooper years ago, probably 2005, 2006. I did a presentation at Bishop Cooper's church. And right after I went in and trained his church, maybe 3 or 4 months later, his basement flooded. But because I had been there and did trainings on what to do in order to, they minimized the damage. Most churches do not have an evacuation plan. If a disaster happens when we're in church, we don't have a plan of escape. It's, everybody for themselves and God for us all. We have to do better. We just have to do better. So I'm on assignment to make sure that the church as a whole is trained. And as a result of that our people are trained, and that we get in position that when something happens, though our vulnerable population will not be the least or the last to get the funding that's available out there. Millions of dollars come out for every disaster, but because we don't know how to access it, we don't get it. And I'm on a mission with my team to make sure that we change that. So a couple of things you just kind of look at, www.ready.gov. Tori, I share that all the time because I just believe we ought to know that. We ought to put a plan together. But there's an amazing article the NAACP did as it relates to disasters and how they affect us as a people. So just an amazing article to read, to say as much as disasters don't discriminate, disasters discriminate, because the money is not sent to our areas. And so just some good information to know. So I believe we're on track to change the church as it relates to disaster through partnership. That's my Easter speech. I'm done.
Bishop Jester,
yes,
she
sir.
always stresses preparedness on the front end. Mm-hmm. I remind people all the time, because I was in New Orleans for Katrina. Well, I was there when we left, and I try to remind people all the time. Katrina was going to Florida,
right?
The whole time it was Florida,
yep.
Florida, and I'll never forget that Sunday morning, because I was there. It was my sophomore year of college at the Xavier University, and. My mom and my parents were all back in the East Coast in DC, where I was born and raised. And they called me 5, 6 o'clock in the morning in a panic. They're like, it turned. And I'm like, it turned? Like, they can do that? Like, I didn't have any experience with hurricanes. They can do that? They were like, yeah, it turned. It's coming like your way. And by Sunday afternoon, it was like all hands on deck, everybody get out, contraflow. And I was in traffic. We drove to Memphis from New Orleans, which should be about a 9-hour drive. It took us 23 hours.
Wow.
It was crazy. And that is because really and truly, by and large, we were unprepared.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
We got relaxed and we said, oh, it's going to Florida. So nobody. That's why even till today, and I mean, listen, like you said, this has been the most active hurricane season in my lifetime for sure.
Yeah.
And when they say, oh, looks like it turned, look like it's going off to the west, look like, it's going to be true. I'm still like, all right, well, I'm not going to be satisfied until like we know for sure, because that's the other thing that, at least about hurricanes, that we've got to remember. All of these are models. They're predictions.
Oh, exactly.
But they can change at any second.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, so being prepared is not like a good suggestion. It's a necessity.
It's a necessity. It's a necessity. One of my little taglines is, the wrong time to learn to dance is when you're at the party.
Right. Oh,
you got to get that before you get to the party. And too often we're just not. And you would be surprised, or maybe not, of how many people live through Katrina and they still don't think about no plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't, because I'm here. But
what do you mean y'all have no plan? You went through it, but disaster's not popular. So we have to work to really get to a place where we see this as a necessity. We really do. And
then I'm still talking about Katrina, but really and truly, COVID exposed us. I mean, like, for real. COVID has been a whole different thing.
Yeah. It's been a whole different thing. And as I said, the only disaster, I think, and as far as we've been tracking, where we stay in all 4 phases at all times, because every day you're learning something else, or not really, and trying to figure out how to respond. And what does recovery look like? And the downside about recovery for COVID is, what does that mean? And when do we go into recovery mode? And so this disaster here is going to be around for a while, but it's definitely going to change how we do life forever.
Yeah, one of our future presentations needs to be just around going back into the building. I mean, that's going to be, going back into the building is going to be, and listen. And I know the Lady Bishop agree with me. I miss preaching. I miss, like, and Zoom is cool and recording and all that stuff. I get it. But I miss grabbing the microphone and squalling every now and then.
Listen.
I miss it, but I don't miss it that much.
Not that much. I am on assignment for doing some things with ministry. So I'm in North Carolina, been here a couple of weeks. So I'm preaching for someone tomorrow. So we don't even go in our building, and I'm going in his building, and I'm like, okay, so this is going to be the first time, but no one's there, of course, but the sound people, but I preach from my living room because I can control that environment. And so it's definitely going to be different tomorrow. Definitely going to be different. I'm not rushing it because, for me, and you do what you do, and you do what works for you. But from a disaster standpoint, I don't want to go in to come back out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too many unknowns.
Absolutely. You can't control. I mean, the NFL don't know what to do right now. They got testing positive, and they got to move this game and move that. And move. They don't know what I heard? They rented, the hotel where the Super Bowl will be. They have booked rooms for I think 2 months, because they're not sure, based on how the season is going to play out, whether they'll be actually able to play the Super Bowl on the day that they are planning on. They might have to extend the season. They might have to. So, yeah, I mean, but if we were better prepared, I mean, all the other advanced countries are not dealing with this like this.
We are not prepared because Washington. I ain't gonna even get into all that, but we should not be in this place. We should not
be in this place.
But again, we have to do better. We just definitely have to do better.
Just today, they're hosting on the South Lawn a gathering, correct?
Elder Feature, we can't do this.
Don't do it.
We can't do this right now.
Don't do it. No, don't do it.
Don't do it. Someone said earlier about the kids in the backyard, and I'm thinking, you got kids in the rose garden.
Yeah. No, it's
terrible. But we're going to keep moving right along.
Hey, Bishop Jester, I know you're out on assignment. Thank you so much, woman of God. We appreciate the great information that you've shared, and letting us know. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not you know, it ain't money coming to me now. It's not any of that.
Right.
So necessary, because this is the stuff that keeps us in poverty.
For sure. Definitely. This is the stuff that keeps us in poverty. You're right.
This is
right.
true.
Thank you.
This
Really,
is true.
I do. I appreciate
No, thank you. And we're going to come back at you again. And again, I don't know if you heard earlier, we're going to take segments from what was presented today. Right. And it'll be solely that particular area. So we'll have a little time to delve into.
It won't go as long either.
Yeah.
I said, what denomination are they? I did. Let me just say it so that I ain't even got to repent. Let me tell you, I talked about y'all. What denomination?
It's a non-denomination, non-time.
I said, y'all made apostolic look different today because we've been in church all day long. We got church credit.
Listen, I think we're done though, Elder Feature. I think we're good, right?
We are.
Ooh, let the church say amen.
Yeah, we are.
And Bishop Jester, you're free to go whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm gonna run. Thank you again. God bless y'all.
Bless you.
All right.
Bless you. Let's see.
It's so good, the fact that these things that we're talking about, they're not just, like I said, they're not just theories. They're not just, you know, oh, maybe just maybe. No, these are concrete things. They gave websites. They gave books.
Exactly.
They gave apps. Go download. Go check out the website. Go do these things now, and you can implement these things into your life and into your ministry right now. And it's I think that is amazing. And again, I'm not trying to, you know, church this too much, but nobody had to pay anything for this. And so I think it's good and right for folks, if they want to be able to sow in the seed into God Vision or into you personally, Julia. I think we got to make a way or allow a way for that to happen. I know I don't want to put you on the spot. I've just been honored to be able to be a part and to engage in these dialogues and host this. And so job well done to you, Elder Feature. Thank you for putting this all together. Thank you that you got vision.
Thank you for embracing the vision and wanting to partner, of course, and be a part of what God has placed in my hands. And I'm so appreciative of you, Pastor Tori. You have moved this train along the entire day. What an amazing conductor you are. And so, again, Pastor Tori is out of New Orleans, where that storm is right now. And so we thank God for the power that he was able to connect and be with us all day. He was not affected, that I don't think. Internally, he's not affected, and I believe he's not affected outside either, externally. So we're just grateful that you are with us today. This has been a long day. And so our next gathering in 2 weeks actually is on October 24th, Saturday, October 24th. We're going to focus on how the church handles domestic violence. And of course, this being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we want to address some concerns and really talk about how we, the church, can advocate for and for domestic violence. So Dr. Selena Carter is going to be with us. She's going to co-host with us next week, on the 24th, along with a few others. So we'll send that information out shortly. But please stay tuned. We have some more work to do. Pastor Tori and I are talking about doing some soft skill training workshops as well. As we alluded to earlier, helping our youth and young adults in their employment etiquettes, right? And teaching them how to have the ability to obtain employment and keep that employment. So stay tuned. Again, we're going to take some segments from today and also come back at a later date, individual segments. And so we don't want to keep you at length. We do apologize for the length, but I believe it was well worth it. I'm sure you were able to glean great information. Yes, they shared websites and books and even their own personal information that you can reach out to those individuals. And that's what today was about. We wanted to empower our parishioners, our leaders, our pastors, equip you with what you need to move forward as we continue to navigate through these troubled waters that we're in right now with COVID. But I appreciate you all, and thank you again. If you need me, you know where to find me. You can inbox me, feel free, and let's stay connected as we continue to look and see the vision. Thank you. Be blessed. Thank you, Pastor Tori. Thank you, Adrian Bullens. My God, what would I do without you today, navigating us through this Zoom? I appreciate you, sir. He's my new technical director, Pastor T, so we don't have to worry about that. So what a blessing he is. And Yolanda Mack, did she come back on? I see her photo. Thank you, Yolanda Mack, for joining us. And she's another one instrumental in helping me with navigating through Zoom. So thank you. May the Lord God bless you all real good. Enjoy your worship experiences tomorrow, and we will be back at you soon. Be blessed. Peace and love.
Blessed.
Amen.